In this video, we're starting with $0, not having anything in our hands. All around us is nothing but forest, and my mission is to build a successful logging company. But there's one catch. I only have 2 years to do it. If you're interested, subscribe and let's get started. When we appeared on the map, we had absolutely nothing. No money, no equipment, just forest all around. Still, there's an upside to that. With the wood, we can earn some decent money. But first, we need to find a way to get equipment to work with it. Right now, the only way to make money is by completing a contract. So let's not waste time and head straight to the store to pick up a job. Only 2 contracts are available to us. Of course, I chose the one that paid more. The task was to transport logs from one point to another. Loading and unloading, naturally, would have to be done by hand. We were given a truck with a trailer and some loaders. So I jumped in the driver's seat and headed to the loading area. Luckily, it wasn't far. As I was driving past a curve, I caught sight of an abandoned car out of the corner of my eye. When I got closer, it became clear that someone had lost control and crashed into a tree. At first glance, the damage didn't seem too bad, but the dried mud and numerous scratches showed it had been sitting there for a while. I made a mental note to think about how I could make money off of it, but for now, I had to stay focused. A few minutes later, I arrived at the site. The wood was scattered around a small part of the forest. That was a bit disappointing, as it meant the loading process would take longer than I expected. The faster I get it done, the better. So I got started. First, I loaded a log near the road, then turned around and started pulling the others in. The work was slow but steady. Once that was done, I headed to the unloading point. The road was a dirt one, so the trip took some time, despite the short distance. When I arrived at the sawmill, I pulled up to the unloading area and went to talk to the mill supervisor, whose name was Ted, to ask what I should do next. He said I could begin unloading. To save time, he offered to let me use a crane that was standing nearby and currently not in use. Perfect. I quickly ran over to the crane, drove it up to our truck, and started unloading. With the crane, the process went much faster. When the work was done, I was told that those weren't all the logs I needed to deliver, so I had to go back and carefully search the area to find the missing ones. Back at the site, I scouted the forest and spotted a few logs resting on the cliffs. They were right on the edge, so I easily pushed them down to load them later. Once again, I loaded the logs and made my way back to the sawmill. This time, I didn't bother with the crane and used the truck's built-in loader. I unloaded everything without any issues. And once the job was finally done, I ran to a small container cabin where I received payment for the contract. Now we finally had something in our account. And of course, that made me really happy. Afterward, I asked Ted if there was any equipment we could buy on our small budget. He said they had some old gear that was no longer in use since it had been replaced with newer models. It was stored behind the big workshop, and he was willing to let it go at a good discount. I went to take a look. On the lot, there was a pickup truck, a tractor, and a small log trailer. I liked the pickup the most. With it, we could transport small batches of wood. I went back to Ted and asked about the price. He said $6,500. That worked for me, so I paid right away and ran over to our new pickup. Now it was time to head to the place where we would build up our future logging company. It was a small gravel lot. Of course, it would need to be cleared and expanded, but for now, I decided to set up a tent. We had to sleep somewhere, after all. Besides, it had started to rain and the day was already ending. The tent cost $50. After setting it up, I figured that was enough for the day. It was time to rest. Waking up the next morning, I immediately headed to the store to buy a chainsaw because right now we had no way to cut down trees. All the models were priced the same, so I chose the one I liked the most. Now it was time to return to our site. Today, I plan to begin clearing the area while also selling the felled wood to make some money. The site was heavily overgrown, so I started at the entrance and decided to gradually work my way deeper into the forest. forest. After cutting down the first tree, I carefully trimmed off the branches, then cut it into small pieces. It would be easier to load them into the pickup bed that way. The entire tree fit neatly in the back, so I headed to the sawmill. Pulling up to the same spot where I unloaded logs last time, I dumped all the wood out of the bed and sold it. The payout was small, but for a start, it wasn't bad at all. The most important thing was that we now had a stable source of income. After making another trip with a full load, I decided to stop by Ted and ask about the price of the trailer we had seen when I bought the pickup. I hoped it would speed up the process by allowing me to load wood not just into the bed, but also into the trailer. Ted gave me the price, $1,000. However, he immediately warned me that the trailer wasn't very convenient for transporting short logs due to its design. Still, I happily bought it. Now I could hitch it to the pickup and continue hauling. When I loaded the pickup bed completely and began stacking logs into the trailer, I understood what Ted meant. The gaps between the trailer's supports were too wide, and the short logs just kept falling through. I found a solution. I took long but thin logs and laid them across the bottom to cover those gaps. After that, I could safely place thicker logs on top. They stayed in place perfectly. Once the trailer was fully loaded, I headed back to sell it all. Now, with each trip, we were earning a lot more money, and things really started picking up. By now, we had a pretty decent amount of money in our account. I remembered the abandoned car we had seen while working on that contract, and decided to ask Ted if he had any equipment that could help pull it out and transport it. He said he actually had a special pickup truck for jobs like that. However, he used it to transport his own equipment, so he could only rent it out for $1,500. I agreed, believing the idea would pay off nicely. After paying the fee, I took the pickup and headed toward the crash site. On the way, I started thinking, if I could recover the car without causing any serious damage, I might be able to restore it and sell it for a good price. But first, the task was simple. Get it out from under the tree carefully. Once on site, I inspected the car and looked for a place to hook the winch. Luckily, there was a tow hitch at the back. Perfect. All I had to do now was carefully position the pickup and attach the winch cable. Despite the number of trees around, I managed to find the right angle. To keep the winch from pulling the pickup itself, I lowered the platform to the ground, creating an anchor point. Everything was ready. After attaching the cable, I began slowly tightening it. The car was pulled out gradually and safely, which made me really happy. Now I just had to get it loaded onto the platform. I repositioned the pickup, lined it up, lowered the platform right under the wheels, and lifted the rear of the car slightly to make the winching easier. I tightened the cable again and slowly but surely pulled the car up onto the platform. Then I secured it tightly with straps to make sure it wouldn't slide during transport. Everything was ready, so I raised the platform and set off for the repair shop. Hopefully, we'd be able to restore it. When I arrived, I carefully unloaded the car, moved the pickup aside, and began inspecting the condition. In the end, it turned out that the necessary spare parts would cost nearly $3,500. Since I didn't quite have enough in the account, I had to leave the car there for now. I got back into the pickup and drove to the sawmill to return Ted's truck and switch back to mine, planning to head home and sell some more wood. But by the time I reached the site, it was already getting dark, so I decided that was enough for the day. Time to rest. The next morning, I already knew exactly what I was going to do, so without any delay, I got straight to work. In just a couple of hours, we managed to earn the amount needed to repair the car. I immediately headed to the workshop and got it fixed. Now, all that was left was to hope it would actually start. When I tried, I was genuinely surprised. The car ran perfectly. The engine purred smoothly. No strange noises at all. Still, just to be safe, I I decided to give it a quick test drive. I drove a few laps around the store's property. Everything went like clockwork. After that, I went straight to sell it, curious how much I could get for it. The shop offered a whole $29,000. That truly made me happy, especially considering we had only invested $3,500. A fantastic profit that will definitely help us grow our company. In high spirits, I returned home and decided it was time to purchase equipment for firewood production. It should significantly increase our profits. From now on, the job would be to supply the production with logs. I immediately got to cutting down trees and loading them up. After felling several trunks, I managed to fill the processor up to a level of 4,000 liters. Wasting no time, I started the machine right away. Let the firewood production begin immediately. Half an hour later, one bag of firewood was already fully ready, but then I realized that I wouldn't be able to load it into the pickup by hand. I urgently needed to buy some equipment to handle the task. I headed to the store to check prices on loaders, but to say I was disappointed would be an understatement. The cheapest one cost $16,000, and the rest were even more expensive, and honestly, they didn't look very reliable. Even if we did buy one, I had a feeling it would just tip over under the weight of a firewood bag, so I needed to look for another solution. That's when I remembered that there was a tractor for sale at the sawmill. I just needed to find out if it could be fitted with a front loader and used to load the bags into the pickup. Without hesitation, I headed to the sawmill. Once there, I went straight to Ted. He told me that the tractor used to be employed for hauling logs, so it already had a mount for a front loader. However, the loader itself had broken a long time ago, and the tractor had just been sitting idle. Eventually, it was replaced with more powerful machinery, and this one was pushed to the side. I immediately asked about the price. Ted named a figure, $15,500. Our budget allowed for it, so I agreed without hesitation. I also asked if I could use his pickup with a platform trailer to transport the tractor to our site. Ted gave me the green light, and I got started with the move right away. On the way back, I stopped by the store to buy a new front loader for the tractor, as well as a special attachment for lifting the bags. Fortunately, we managed to stay within our budget. After that, I loaded all the new equipment and headed to our site. Once I unloaded the tractor, I immediately returned to the sawmill to pick up our vehicle. By that time, quite a lot of firewood had already been produced, so it was time to speed things up and focus on loading and selling it. I got into the tractor and started loading the bags. I managed to fit only 2 bags into the pickup bed, which is actually not bad considering it's not very large. Now it was time to head back to the sawmill to sell the firewood. In the end, I earned a decent amount, and since the firewood is produced fairly quickly, I'm sure this equipment will pay for itself very soon. In great spirits, I returned to the site. By that time, we had run out of logs, so it was time to cut a new batch. Since we had made some profit from selling firewood, I decided we could now afford to buy a log grab. It would greatly simplify and speed up the work. No more cutting logs into small pieces. Now we could transport them whole straight to the production area. Without wasting time, I jumped into the pickup and headed to the store. There, I chose a grab that fit our tractor and asked them to load it right into the bed. After securing it tightly, I headed back to the site. Once I returned, I immediately got to work cutting trees. This time, I decided to cut down a larger batch so that I could quickly transport them to the processor later. In the end, I managed to clear a good portion of the area and cut down a large number of trees. Now it was time to start transporting them. Some of the logs were so heavy that they slightly lifted the rear of the tractor, but that wasn't a big issue. Thanks to the wide tires, the machine held its balance really well. I think we'll solve this problem soon by purchasing a counterweight. For now, I continued hauling the logs. By the end of the day, I had completed the main task, and during that time, The first snow had even started to fall. I placed the last log onto the main pile. It turned out to be a pretty impressive amount. All of it was now ready to be loaded into the processor. In total, we managed to load just over 20,000 liters of wood. Now, we just had to wait for it to be processed into firewood. I was really exhausted from the day's work, so I decided it was time to rest. The next morning, a pretty large number of firewood bags were already waiting for us. They needed to be sold as soon as possible, which I immediately got to work on. After making several trips, I earned enough money to buy an additional platform. Now we could transport bags of firewood on it as well. Thanks to that, the work sped up noticeably. By the end of the day, all the firewood had been successfully sold, and we managed to earn just over $70,000. So I finally decided to build myself a proper house. Living in a tent had become truly cold and uncomfortable. In addition to the house, I also built a shelter for our equipment, so it wouldn't have to sit out in the open anymore. All that was left was to park the equipment under the shelter, and with that, we could consider this stage complete. We've come a long way. We started from absolutely nothing, managed to earn money for equipment, set up production, and build ourselves a great home. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.